健康搞飞机，让你身体不 NG。
Hello everyone, this is Stevie. Thank you for coming to our podcast. Today we have a very interesting topic to talk about. We know that this pandemic of COVID-19 not only severely hit our global economy, but also brought a lot of negative impact to various industries. However, there's a very special line of business that has actually been moving against the tide and experiencing growing sales. In this episode, we're going to find out more about contract research organizations, or CROs, whose support to pharmaceutical companies has become ever more indispensable. As per authentic reports, the global CRO market size is expected to exceed $90 billion, and the market in the Asia-Pacific region is also booming. We are very honored today to have Dr. Karen Zhu, CEO of Harvard's Integrated Research Organization, a rising CRO, to share her insight with us. Hello, Karen. Welcome to our show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So, Karen, can you firstly talk about a little bit of yourself and maybe of your company?
Sure. Let me share a little bit about my background, and also then I can share about our company and also about CRO and CRO market. First of all, I'm Taiwanese. I was born here, and then I grew up in the States. I got my PharmD, a Doctor of Pharmacy degree at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And then 2002, I returned to Asia Pac. I've joined a regional CRO at that time called Apex International. Since then, from 2002 to 2019, I've been part of a global CRO, par excel to be particular. So I've been with this industry for more than 18 years. And I also experienced the market in Asia Pac. It's been doing very well, and also globally, CRO has been doing very well. So that's my background in terms of clinical research development.
Then please, can you tell us about your company, HiRO?
It's a newly established CRO since September of last year, so 2020, in the midst of pandemic. We started this with a group of veterans from the CRO world. All of us have been in this industry for close to 20 years. We set our first office in Shanghai. Main reason is obviously the biotech and the capital in China has been on the rise, been doing very well. There's a lot more pipeline coming out of China, going to the world, going to the global market. So we've started there. Our goal obviously is become a global CRO and one of the most influential CRO in the world in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's me, and that's HiRO for short. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. So thank you for coming again to talk about CRO to us. And then I have to say my knowledge about CRO is very limited. All I know is that it stands for clinical or contract research organizations. So please, can you tell us more about what they actually do?
Sure. That's correct. So CRO stands for clinical research organization or contract research organization. It started as a contract research organization because in around 1940s, 1950s, it started as big pharmaceuticals needs to outsource their development process. So it could be preclinical. That means before it goes into humans, they can outsource preclinical research, meaning some testing are done on the animals. So, rodents or monkeys, people might know that part. And then as the outsourcing become more popular or become more mainstream, they started to outsource clinical. So clinical meaning in humans, right? So when you move into human clinical research, then there's usually 3 phases of clinical research. So phase 1 is on healthy volunteers, usually. But of course, if the drug is a little bit more toxic, or you can say it needs to be in patients, so phase 1 could be done on healthy volunteers or in patients. But it's usually a very small number of people, 20 to 80 people, and it mainly monitors safety to make sure the drug is safe. And then it will move on to a phase 2 and a phase 3. So phase 2 is a little bit bigger trial, between 80 to 200 people. And it looks mainly on safety again, but they want to see some efficacy of the drugs. And then phase 3 is what we usually know is large scale, multinational, a lot more patients and thousands of patients to make sure that in a larger population, the drug is actually safe and efficacious. So a biotech company or a pharmaceutical company can outsource the phase 1 to phase 3 to a CRO. So that's the purpose for CRO companies.
I see. So it sounds like it's an outsourced service that you can provide for big pharma. Then why would they do that? Can they also do the work? Then why would it be more beneficial to give the work to your company?
Yes. So there's a couple reasons why a pharmaceutical company outsources this. One has to do with their own capabilities. So for example, if I'm a company that I used to do mainly cardiovascular drugs, and all of a sudden I have a pipeline that I need to do breast cancer or liver cancer, but I've never done it before, so I don't know how to do it. So then I can find a CRO to help me with that capability to help me around the world to do this. So that's number one, is capability. Number two is, let's say I'm a Taiwanese biotech companies. I have no operations in US or in Europe. I might need a CRO to help me conduct the clinical trial at different countries, different regions. So that's two. Number three could be a cost reason, because CRO, they do clinical research for a living, and of course, a little bit more efficiency. So from a cost perspective, sometimes pharmaceutical company can use CRO as a cost measure, basically to control cost-wise. So these are mainly the three reasons why pharmaceutical companies start to outsource work to CRO companies.
That's right. And by doing so, I guess they can not only save money, but they can also rely on your expertise that maybe they don't have currently, or maybe in this way they don't have to hire permanent staff to do the work. They can use your service, and you can also provide global different research for them.
Yeah, that's correct.
But if you do research in different regions of the world, perhaps you also need to be very careful about different regulations. Is that also part of your service?
Yes. So, well, each country have their own regulatory agency, right? So in the US, there's US FDA. Of course, when you want to conduct clinical trials there, you have to apply. There's a particular process for you to apply for the government to allow you to conduct clinical trial there in that country. So that's definitely a regulatory affairs department will do in terms of regulatory strategy, regulatory agency, the IND submission. So that's definitely part of our services. But also I think that the most important part is that doesn't matter where you conduct clinical trial, doesn't matter which country conduct clinical trial, it has to be under a very strict process, systems, and also there's a global standard called ICH GCP that governs the way you conduct clinical research. So we definitely follow that standard, and doesn't matter where you conduct, that standard is definitely needed to be followed.
Right. So if they use your service, then they can be reassured that the data will be accurate, and also everything will be comply to all the regulations.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely can trust that data has integrity. That's for sure.
And this will become more and more important, and then those pharma can focus their energy on maybe doing R&D or also other core business. They can put more efforts into finding cures and perhaps you can provide necessary data to support their great work, especially in our pandemic world.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, one of the other reasons for biotech companies to outsource is that they can focus their core competency, right?
Then is there any different types of CRO, of this contract research organizations? If so, then what are the differences?
Oh, okay. So there's a size difference. There's, global 60,000, 80,000 people companies. There are regional CROs. There are local CROs. We call it in a single country. Local CROs, they're fairly small. They conduct clinical trial only in that one country. And also there's specialty in some of the CROs. So it could be a CRO is more focused on oncology or more focused on cardiovascular. So they could be therapeutic area aligned as well. And then there's a newer ones of, we also call it in this industry, they focus on more of the technology front. Okay, so whether they sell softwares that they can support the clinical research to go a little faster or more efficient. So there's many different types of CROs.
Mm-hmm. And your company, HiRO, is a new startup in this market. So how would you position your company in this field?
So if you can see the name, Harvest Integrated Research Organization, we did not use the C, right? We did not use contract nor clinical. We believe that in the future, not only regarding the clinical research part, we think that it needs to be integrated with a lot more technology, a lot more AI, a lot more real world data or real world evidence, using the real data out there to help you construct a better research or better research development. So we're currently labeling us as a full service CRO, meaning that we do end to end. We can do phase 1 to phase 3 and all the functions within. We also label ourselves that we can be global. Although we just newly started, we definitely have the ambition to be at least a regional CRO and a global CRO in the future. But we also will integrate a lot more of the newer technology within the traditional CRO world. So that's why we call it integrated research organization and not clinical research organization.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned AI, so I guess that's very exciting to use all the latest technology to help us get the data. But as you also mentioned, it's very important to be able to conduct global researches. Right now we are having some lockdowns or people staying at home. Does that present any challenges to your business that maybe visits or experiment will be more difficult to do?
Yes, so definitely this pandemic did impact our industry, because mainly where we conduct our research is at hospitals. So we have patients, or as they join the trial, they call subject, they participate a clinical trial inside a hospital with investigators, right, or physicians. We double check the data by, of course, using technology, but also in a way is we have staff, or we call CRAs, that visits the hospital to make sure that the data has integrity, as I mentioned, to make sure that it's correct. So it does impact a little bit of, can the patient go to the hospital? That's one. Some of the hospitals are shut down. Or can CRO staff go to the hospital, right? Because that's also shut down. So it did have some impact in the beginning of the pandemic. However, as we move along this year of pandemic, we've made a lot of progress in terms of we call it remote or virtual type of visits, meaning now the patient can have virtual visits with the doctors, right? They don't have to necessarily go to hospitals. So we now rely on a lot more technology to make sure that the patient can actually still join these really advanced clinical trials so they can actually get new medicine or new type of medicine. And as a healthcare industry, we can continue to push these products onto market. So there's a lot more technology or platform that help us with that. We call it virtual trials or virtual visits. So meaning that they don't have to be physically there. On the CRO side, we call it more of a remote monitoring, or also you can call it virtual visits. Basically is we also have ways to ensure data integrity remotely. So meaning we don't have to go to the hospitals for that. So there's definitely an impact, but there's a lot more advancement in these type of technology to help us to avoid the delays.
Yes, so you certainly have figured all this out, and you could utilize technology to help you conduct those research. And then how does AI come into play in your process?
I have to say, in terms of clinical research per se, the process is evolving in the sense of some of the machine learning help us identify certain data trends, right? Or algorithms that can help us identify certain mechanism or ways that we can look at. From an AI perspective, I see it more involved with real-world evidence or real-world data. It means that the actual data that's out there, that we can utilize AI to help us analyze the data or digest the data a lot faster than before.
I see. Then is there any other core business areas that you would like to share with us for your company?
I think that in a CRO perspective, mainly has to do with a lot of the experience with understanding how to do drug development. So one of our core strengths is making sure that we can support the mid-sized, the smaller size biotech companies or biopharmas to make sure that they can leverage the world, all the countries that they can penetrate to conduct their trials. So that's definitely our core strength and our core business model.
Right. So you provide a highly professional expertise to your clients, and then they can only rely on your service to get the data they need. So actually, here I have another question, which is about your competitive edge over other companies, but I guess you just mentioned that. Is there anything you want to add on to that?
I think the one thing I probably didn't mention before is majority of our management team or majority of our current staff all have global experiences. That's one thing very different from some of the more smaller CROs. So as a startup, I think that we have a pretty good team. That's very differential from other companies.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So then can you share with us what challenges and opportunities lie ahead in the future for contract research service providers?
Sure. As I mentioned, actually this industry has been growing rather rapidly. Every year it has around 10 to 18% CAGR in terms of growth as an industry. So as you can see, in this industry, you need a lot more knowledge or experience matters, or years of experience matters. So I foresee, and obviously it has already been a challenge for this industry, is professional personnel. Whether we can attract experienced staff to join us and whether we can retain them. I think that's the most challenging part in the CRO industry.
And to grow your business, I assume that you would need not just medical professionals, but perhaps other professionals in different domains, like maybe engineering for technology or maybe for project management. So here actually represents a huge potential for maybe job seekers and for investors alike.
No, that's actually very true. So a lot of people do think CRO is a more of a medical professional major only, but actually in many of the CROs there's doctors, pharmacists, nurses, a lot of the bio majors are also part of the lineup. And also biostatistician. A lot of people probably don't know biostatistician and data programmers are also needed as part of the CRO world. And only to mention, I've also mentioned about the AI and also the technology based. So like you said, a lot of engineers, software programmers, they definitely can seek out this industry as well.
Okay, so it sounds like a very attractive business, maybe for investors as well. Then is there any information you would like to share with them?
Sure. Actually, there's a lot of big activities in the CRO world lately. So if the investors have heard of Thermo Fisher and buying PPD, the largest deal in history of CRO. So I think that this world continue to grow, continue to do very well. So any investor interested in biotech or biopharma, or you've been investing in this world, maybe should consider invest in a healthcare service company. Is that we help these pharmaceutical companies to conduct trials. So we're definitely part of this the booming industry. So I think that CRO definitely has a long, I'll say definitely another 20, 30 years to go. That's for sure.
That's right. And we have already seen a lot of demand surge in this pandemic. Then can you also give us some projection about the future, maybe of your organization or maybe of this industry?
Sure. I think that with this pandemic, there's a lot more consideration of each country's capability to develop vaccines, of course, in this case, but also drugs to treat, for example, COVID-19. But more and more, I think that there's a higher awareness from the general public about, how does a drug become safe and efficacious, right? So I think this, as the world gets a little bit more educated on this part, the CRO, well, the pharma industry, inclusive of CRO industry, will definitely continue to do well. So I think that for HiRO, would definitely benefit from this unfortunate event, right? Meaning, although it's not a great event, but I think that it also creates a lot more awareness of whether how we should continue to invest money into drug development, how we should conduct to make sure it's safe and efficacious. So I think that we definitely benefit from this and will continue to do well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. So as a average Gen, I guess for normal people, maybe we don't really know so much about this industry, but I guess in the future for new drugs, new vaccines, we really need to see the safety proof for this new kind of treatment. So perhaps in the future we can expect to see some reputable CRO company alongside with big pharma when they present new treatment to us. So I guess that will also be a very important part in our health, in our life as well. So for general public, how we should view this development of your industry?
For the general public, I would say that please know that there's a lot of healthcare professionals are working very hard to make sure that there's new drugs, new vaccines coming through the pipeline. There's definitely a lot of investment needed because drug development is definitely not cheap, but actually very expensive. Because if you think about the global complexity, all the requirements, people need to perform at a very high standard. So definitely drug development is expensive. So I think that's one. And I think the other is, as people see clinical research or clinical trial, I think the general public should know that it is okay to join them. When your physician or your doctor asks you, do you want to participate in clinical research? It is okay. There is a lot of process, a lot of double check. The regulatory agency also watches over us, meaning the CROs, the pharma company, to make sure that it is ethical but also safe, and at least the safe in the process of part of the clinical research, that you have medical attention that you needed. So to change that traditional view of clinical research is very it's like testing animals. It's actually very, very different standards nowadays. So I think And maybe a message to the general public is this healthcare industry definitely needs your support. CRO industry needs your support, and by supporting that, participate in clinical trial is one way also for the general public to be, think of it as a dedication to the general public, right? So
that is very true, especially when we are developing vaccines for COVID-19. Without those participants, there's no way we can put out a solution to end this pandemic. So it's been a very interesting session talking with Karen. So thank you so much for sharing everything you know with us. It's been very educational. And then if you, our dear audience, if you have any questions, please, you can comment down below and let us know. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.